If you're not subscribed to the After School Observer, that's our monthly newsletter. We send out all sorts of useful information. We talk about opportunities for funding or just resources and curricula, current trends in after school. So if you're not subscribed, I definitely recommend doing so. You can visit our website. It's ncafterschool.org, and you can subscribe right in the website. It just goes out once a month, so we don't flood your inbox or anything, but I do think it has lots of useful information, and a link to the recording for this conversation will be on there as well. Before I get really deep into any conversation, any sort of webinar, I do like to talk a little bit about some community norms. I've never really run into an issue, but I think they're still worth stating and they're worthwhile. So throughout the conversations today, I'd like everyone to feel like they can express thoughts freely and respectfully. I'd like us to assume good intentions on behalf of our fellow learners. Not everyone is quite as well rehearsed in some of the content we're going over today. So they might not totally understand some of the finer points. So we're going to embrace some of the rough draft thinking and be prepared for some potential messiness as we kind of tackle some of the tasks we're taking on today. I know that Zoom calls, we've all done a million of these, and they're really humdrum and can be kind of boring at this point. But I am going to ask that in our conversations, we kind of open ourselves up a little bit, that we take risks and ask questions and seek to understand as applicable. Strive to be fully present. I know that we are all super busy. Everyone who works in an after-school program or at a school or in a nonprofit ends up wearing a lot of hats. So it can feel really tricky to be fully present. But I'm going to ask we do our best to do so throughout this conversation. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to monitor your airtime. And that kind of works in two directions. So just as we're going through our conversation today, take a second to reflect on whether you should step back. So if you find that you're the only one talking and there are other folks who might want to be talking as well, you might want to step back a little bit. But if you have something you want to contribute and you haven't really done so yet, then I would encourage you to lean into the conversation. Any questions about these norms or anything you all think we should add? That's very welcome as well. You can throw it in the chat if you think of anything, that's fine. But today's special presenter is Dr. Richard Lewis from the Office of Learning Recovery and Acceleration. And Dr. Lewis, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself real quick, and then we'll circle back to you here in 1 minute.
All right. Good morning, and thank you for your time today. Thank you, Wayne. I started out as a lateral entry teacher that then went into education to be a mentor. So I taught math for 14 years and then became an AP and then became a district administrator for the after-school programs of a school district. So I see the intersection between the public school unit and the OST program. Even my dissertation covered the experiences of staff in the after-school setting, and even created a program at the onset of COVID. So today, hopefully I can share some insights with you from also looking at it through the school lens, and then also how it aligns, because knowing that some of our programs either have protocols already in place, or if you're a licensed program, I ran 5-star programs, that there are other restrictions that may be there. And hopefully, because before COVID, this was probably not a conversation that was held as often, but hopefully we can see where that intersection can show where there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to hearing your insights. Thank you, Wayne.
Absolutely, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. I know when I was working exclusively in the after-school arena, I did not have a lot of insight into the classroom because I never worked as a classroom teacher until a couple years ago. So having you here, I think will be a really good perspective for a lot of our after-school providers today. So we really appreciate that. As we get started, we're going to do a quick breakout room session. We're going to warm up a little bit, get talking a little bit. So this is a community connector. So I want you to think about who are the partners that your programs work with right now. So I have a couple questions you can see on here that might kind of push that conversation along. So does your program work with any other organizations? What kind of benefit do you provide to one another? How did that partnership start? How long has it been going? And if you don't have any partnerships for your organization right now, who do you wish you were partnered with? I'm sure there are folks in the community that you'd really love to work with that maybe you're not working with right now. So I'm gonna divide us into some breakout rooms real quick. 1 second here. Okay. And as I'm getting these like kind of broken out, I'd like you to think about these questions. So take a look at them for a quick second here. And I also want you to, sorry, I'm breaking the rooms out here. As I'm doing this, I want you to also think about how you can introduce yourself to someone else in the room with you. Let's see. So, 1, 2, 2. I'm going to give you all about 5 minutes for this activity. So just keep that in mind as we're talking with our fellows. All right. Before we break into these rooms, does anyone have any questions about what we're working on right now? Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me through the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and open these rooms and you can join them as you feel ready. See, we got some new folks. I'm going to assign these new folks to some rooms real quick as well. Let's see. Oops. Yeah. Wendell, are you with us right now? And Richard, I just sent out a note that they're going to rejoin the room at 12:17. So we got a couple minutes here.
Okay,
Keep you
no
updated.
worries. Thank you. Doing a great job so far, Wayne.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm so sorry. I was in my room with someone and then my computer froze.
Oh,
So I
okay.
could not hear anything that, well, I could hear her, but she could not hear me. So I had to
Gotcha.
just close Zoom out and rejoin.
Okay,
So I left somebody hanging.
do you remember the name of the person you were with? Was it Caitlin and Cameron?
I don't, it was just one other person.
Just one other person. Okay, let me see where I can drop you in here.
My screen was just frozen, so.
Oh, that's all right. It happens. It's just, technology. It's so useful, but also a little tricky sometimes.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna drop you into room one. So you might have some new people. So just introduce yourself and talk about your partners a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And that invite should just have got to you. There we go. Looks like we got some folks who are joining us. Maybe they're wrapping up their conversations. Let's send out the 1 minute warning to everybody. Left. I appreciate everyone's participation. I know it's hard to get onto a Zoom call and turn cameras back on and talk to strangers, but I do appreciate that. I'm going to start closing these rooms. All right, everyone should be on their way back here. They're on a timer now, so one way or another, we'll all be back here. Excellent, excellent. There's two rooms that are still talking a little bit, but they're on a timer. They'll be here shortly. Welcome, welcome. All right. Okay, there we go. I think we have everybody back. So I appreciate you all taking the time to be a part of these breakout sessions. I was telling some of the early arrivals, I know it can be a little uncomfortable to talk to strangers and turn your cameras on or whatever it might be, but I do appreciate that. And I do think that it helps us feel more comfortable as we discuss like steps moving forward later in our webinar today. So I appreciate you taking the time. Did anyone have any strong takeaways from their conversation? Anyone notice some partners that, or some groups that had really strong partners, or maybe you realized I need more partners? Any big takeaways? All right, and that's okay. But I'm glad you had a chance to get to know each other a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and steam forward here because today is all about like building strong, meaningful partnerships. But I mentioned I would talk a little bit about NCCAP just to make sure we're all kind of aware of who I am and where I'm coming from. So NCCAP is the North Carolina Center for After School Programs. We've been around for about 20 years, and we're a statewide network. We're one of 50 statewide networks. And we help get together key partners in North Carolina who have vested interest in after school and out of school learning. I do point out that we're called the Center for After School Programs, but we consider after school to be anything that's out of school learning. So that's directly after school, before school, summer camps, track out camps, holiday camps, or whatever that might look like. If students are learning outside the classroom, we consider that to be a part of our network of after school providers. And like I said, we partner with all sorts of different agencies, like state agencies, like we're doing today with the Department of Public Instruction and the Office of Learning Recovery and Acceleration. We partner with policymakers, law enforcement, universities, community colleges, the philanthropic community, to work together to increase access to high quality after school and expanded learning programs for all the children in North Carolina, especially those who are at risk of falling behind academically. So that's kind of our big mission, and we've been doing it for a long time, over 20 years now. And we believe a couple things. So we believe that how students spend time outside of school is a determining factor for success academically and just in life. And that quality after school and expanded learning opportunities help to improve learning outcomes and provide engaging experiences after school's ended. I think with my crowd today, that's probably safe to say a lot of us probably agree with this sentiment, right? There is research that backs it up though, and the research shows that high quality after school and expanded learning programs improve academic performance, school day attendance, they nurture youth development, decrease juvenile crime, and hinder other high risk behaviors. And after school programs do all of that while meeting the needs of working families. So after school tends to be a win-win for a lot of families in our communities in North Carolina. All that to say is I get the question a lot is what does NCCAP actually do? So I say that we kind of have four main things that we do. We support, we inform, we convene, and we advocate. So we support in the form of we connect after school programs and providers with opportunities and resources. So our website is full of curricula that you can access right now. The curricula is free. We have STEM content that is both in English and in Spanish. It's aligned to the North Carolina standards. Any after school program in our state can access that at any time and use that freely. We provide our After School Observer newsletter. That's kind of support and inform. But what's crucial about that is we connect program providers with all sorts of opportunities, be they academic, be they professional development, or even funding opportunities as they come available in our state. So if you're not subscribed to the After School Observer, I'm going to recommend once again that you visit our website and you do so. That's ncafterschool.org. We inform. So today is one of these sessions where we really try to inform the providers in North Carolina about what's happening in the state of after school, right? So today we're going to talk about building strong relationships with our local schools and how that can last beyond kind of this ESSER funding timeframe. We convene. Just give me like the hands up emoji on Zoom if you've ever heard of the Synergy conference. Synergy. So NCCAP is responsible for Synergy. It's an annual convening of after school and summer camp providers in North Carolina, where we provide professional development opportunities. I see at least a couple of thumbs up here. All sorts of opportunities for professional development while you're at this conference to kind of understand new trends in after school, where after school is heading, and to develop your skill set and your capacity as an after school provider. And then we also advocate. So we advocate at every level, the federal, the state, and the local level. And we advocate for expanded access to out-of-school learning. I can't emphasize how important these opportunities are for the students in North Carolina, and we try to make sure that importance is recognized by the people who are making decisions in our state as well. Actually, I guess before I move on, any questions about NCCAP, kind of who we are, why we might be here today? Okay. All right. If you think of them, don't be shy. You can put them in the chat. You can call out. I'm not opposed to being interrupted. That's totally fine. But I want to start by talking about what are ARP and ESSER funds. So I've been in this role for about 8 months now at the North Carolina Center for After School Programs. And when I started in this role, I started getting all these acronyms thrown at me. So ARP and ESSER, and I had no idea what they meant. And maybe you're a little more well-informed than I was, but I think it's important to kind of start at the beginning before we can move forward. So ARP funds, ARP stands for the American Rescue Plan. And you might have heard about this in the news because it was just an enormous plan. It happened like in the pandemic. It's a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package. That's trillion with a T. So it's enormous. And it was signed into law by President Biden on March 11th, 2021. So this has been around for a couple of years now. And ARP provides funds for a variety of programs and initiatives. So if you got those stimulus payments a couple years ago, that was part of the American Rescue Plan. So they provide direct payments to individuals and families. They helped increase unemployment benefits. They aided small businesses. And this is the big one for us, is that a lot of the money went to funding schools and hospitals. They invested in infrastructure and clean energy and relief for state and local governments, right? But today we're going to focus on the funding for schools. And that might sound kind of weird for some of us because we're not necessarily in a school, right? We're in an after-school program or a summer camp program or whatever we might be. But we're going to expand that a little bit here. So ARP funding is basically just all the money the government gave out to help people and businesses during COVID-19. It was scheduled to end September 30th, 2022. But there's a smaller part of that funding pot called ESSER funding. It's a part of the American Rescue Plan. The whole package was $1.9 trillion, right? That's for all of ARP. ESSER funding is $122 billion going to our nation's schools. These numbers are like staggeringly high, so it can be hard to wrap our head around sometimes, but there's a lot of money that was dedicated to our schools and like learning recovery efforts during the pandemic, during and after. So ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. So that's the ESSER. The goal of the ESSER funding is to help schools and districts recover from the pandemic and to continue to provide high quality education to students. So ESSER funds can be used for a bunch of things. And again, not all of these are going to be applicable to us as after-school providers, right? But these funds can be used for hiring teachers or retaining teachers, providing mental health and other support services to students. That's a big one we've seen a lot of need for. Purchasing PPE, so things like masks and that kind of stuff, right? Upgrading technology and infrastructure, providing additional tutoring and academic support. And I bolded this last one because this is where a lot of us might kind of fall into the fold here. So making up for lost learning time. So making up for lost learning time can happen in a lot of ways. It can happen in the school, but it can also happen during out of school time. So the question is ESSER funding available to OST or out of school time providers? And the short answer is no, or not directly. So we will not get ESSER funds given to us through the federal government. So ESSER funds in North Carolina were distributed to local school districts who then determine how to use and allocate these federal funds. So we would not be getting the funds from the federal government or even the state government. If you were to find a beneficial partnership with a school district, they would allocate those funds to an after-school program they might want to partner with. There are still some funds available for school districts to utilize until the upcoming, people call it the funding cliff, at which point the federal funding pools will disappear. So the funding phase for phase 1 of ESSER was until September 30th of 2021. Phase 2 was until September 30th of this year. And then phase 3 is going to be funded through September 30th of 2024. So we have a little time here. The window is closing, but there are still opportunities to partner with schools to aid in these learning recovery efforts and establish programs that supplement and enrich efforts in the classroom across our state. So I think that's something really important to note here, is that there is a window here to partner with schools effectively to really aid in what they're doing to help students recover from the pandemic. Okay, before I move on, because like I said, this was kind of all news to me when I first started in this position. Did anyone have any questions about the ARP or the ESSER funding and kind of where that money's coming from or how it might be distributed? Okay. So on that note, I would like to welcome Dr. Richard Lewis. So like I said, he is here as a special guest today, and he's going to talk about collaborative opportunities for out-of-school providers in local schools. So Richard, whenever you feel ready, feel free to hop on and we will get the ball rolling.
All right, thanks, Wayne. And if anyone needs to mute or needs to interrupt me, please raise your hand, because I want to make sure that I answer any questions. And of course, Wayne will share my contact information if you need to contact me with specific questions. But just really, you covered everything. I am what's called the American Rescue Plan Program Administrator. So with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, this is through the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration. So we focus a lot on helping districts use evidence-based, data-driven decisions when it comes to spending their ESSER funds and to make sure they're used appropriately. One of the things that Wayne had said earlier was, this is correct. All PSUs determine where they spend their funding. However, what I'd like to do is by showing you two funding sources that you can actually come forward to PSUs, because we just came from traveling across the state and sharing some of the latest learning recovery data with districts. And one of the things that does come up is we are looking for opportunities to collaborate. However, we don't see a correlation between what's being offered to what we need. And hopefully we can help you build that bridge today. Next slide, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So when we talk today, you'll see me highlight two PRC codes. That's 189 and 181. Both of these are funded through ESSER 3, and they are obligated by September the 30th, 2024, meaning that these funds need to be obligated to be spent by September the 30th, 2024. The first one we'll talk about is PRC 189. Next slide, please. Now, PRC 189, otherwise known as After School Math Enrichment, and I will not read the slide to you. I'm not that type of person. However, I will tell you this, that when you look at the purpose of the fund, it is to support students who are deemed at risk. And usually, and when I ran a program, and this is also how it translated in my youth, that our after school providers are what supported those kids to where that critical time from 3 to 6 that we know students will be out of school and could potentially get into difficult situations. This is where OST providers fill the gap. And when you look at the after school enrichment, one of the biggest things that has been brought to my attention is that districts are looking for collaborations in the area of, we need staff that can provide support while students are being tutored. Many districts are using one-to-one online programs. So when I would hear, because I've spoken with some providers, and one of the concerns was, well, my staff cannot tutor in math. That may not be the ask of the PSU. The ask may be, do you have a space? Do you have the staff? Do you have the ability that we can send our students to you and they can log into this program and your staff monitor them? Now, of course, that is an arrangement that you will work out with the PSU on how that will work. And I also understand that there are times that you cannot dedicate your entire time to maybe tutoring students instead of the program you would like to have in place, which is understandable. However, these academic programs will take place before or after school. And this is the point I always specify. And this was said earlier by Wayne about the special place that OSTs occupy. You do provide social, emotional, and mental health supports for students. Research has shown that the relationship between after-school staff being non-familial, meaning you're not a family member, non-evaluatory, you are not a teacher that you will be expecting a grade of this student. That relationship with that kid is actually very critical because the student knows you're there for them. So responding to the social, emotional, and mental health needs of students is built into your DNA. However, when you think with hesitancy about, I cannot tutor in math, that may not be the ask that the PSU has. The PSU may simply be asking, can our students attend your program so they can have time to tutor? But again, this is a one-to-one conversation. So sometimes, next slide, please, you can think about how you could fit that need. So let's say that you have a robotics club. Well, an exemplar could be, this is a collaboration that you could put in place. A 2-day program with a sample schedule that you see right there in front of you. This would require you to, of course, work with the district, find out what they find important, but also still allow you to meet some of those STEM activities that I know that are very popular in OST programs, and yet still support what the PSU needs as well as what you would need as a program. Next slide, please. You also could have a math enrichment club. This is more along the lines of when we think about PRC 189, because the focus was on the standards in 4th through 8th grade math. So this could be something, again, that's only 2 days per week, but that you could partner with a PSU on how you would make this look. Now, when you look at this, again, this is just a potential schedule. You would, of course, reach out to your local school district. You would work with them on, okay, this is what you need. This is what we can provide if this is a conversation. And I also share this with PSUs, that if I could somehow facilitate, Wayne and I could both do this together, facilitate a conversation between you and a potential PSU to where you could offer your services to support this type of program. Next slide, please. And see how that you could see, if you look at this schedule, this lines up a lot with what you see in an after school program when they leave. Kids come in after school, they usually get their snack, they usually have a transition. You can integrate this. A PSU is a public school unit. So a lot of you have probably heard about LEAs, PSUs. You're going to hear me say charters as well. No worries. Like Wayne said, you are going to have a lot of abbreviations thrown out at you. That's just part of the game. So anytime I say something and you say, okay, Dr. Lewis, what is a PSU? I will gladly answer that. So thank you for that question. And the chat pops up right in front of me so I can see it as soon as you send it. So again, when you look at this schedule, this is an easy way that you can see how you could possibly integrate this into what you already have in place. Next slide, please. Now, the one that I feel is critical, and again, this is these funds are obligated until September 30th, 2024. And if you'll look at this, there is what is known also as the 20% set aside. These are funds that are meant to address those who are most impacted by the pandemic, disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And if you'll look in here, you'll see summer learning, summer enrichment. Having run these type of programs, you are looking at a lot of opportunities to be creative and how you can partner with a public school unit on how you could potentially tie your program into what they're wanting to see for their students. Also, comprehensive after-school programs. And I've looked at your slide deck already, Wayne, so Wayne is going to go over that a bit more. But I love the concept of comprehensive after-school programs because you then form a more connected relationship with the community, the family, and the schools, which I feel like after schools and day schools serve the same students. Don't let this relegate you simply to public schools. You can also look at charters. There are a ton of charters who are in need of that human capital. That's what your program can provide. You just have to see how your two missions will align. So when you think about what you want your program to do, again, remember it should respond to the academic. And that way, this is where you work with the public school to find out what do you need us to help you with. I'm sure that they can help guide you in that direction. Many schools are all willing to offer training if need be, but the social and emotional needs and to address the disproportionate impact of the coronavirus on these disadvantaged students is what you do on a daily basis. So again, Wayne's going to go into some other points. You have tools that he will share with you that will show you how much money a specific school district will have set aside for PRC 189 or PRC 181. You can then design your program and reach out to them and find out, what can I do to support you? And I promise you, you will probably get a resounding response when you say, what can we do to support you? Because it is all hands on deck. You are part of the solution. And I thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity, Wayne.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate what you said about what after school is already doing, because it's like you said, the heart and soul of after school is to address these social and emotional needs of students. And y'all have been doing that since the creation of your program, essentially, right? So you're already providing value to your community and to your students. And if you can partner with schools to kind of illustrate how valuable your work is and how much it's going to enrich what they're doing, those partnerships are, I think, really natural, and there's a lot of overlap there. But Dr. Lewis mentioned that I was going to show you some ways to kind of determine how many funds might be available in your area. So I'm going to provide you all with a resources page. Let me see if I can share that in the link right now, actually. This resources page has a link to a dashboard, and this is a screenshot from that dashboard. The dashboard is really cool because it breaks down these different pots of this funding from COVID-19, and it kind of tells you how much is left in each pot. So the blue ones have been spent more by different areas, and the red ones still have a lot of funding left in their pots. And I just put a link in the chat. This link is to that resources page I was mentioning. And you can see kind of under the ESSER funding resources, there's a link to the dashboard if you would like to look at that. But here's an example from the example that Dr. Lewis just used. So this is that 189 fund, the ARP math enrichment programs. You can see that the allotment was almost $34 million. Yes, I can make the link shareable. Give me 1 second here, y'all. Sorry about that. but only about 3 million of that 33 million has been spent. So there's a lot of funding left in this 189 ESSER pot, right? And that's something that if you can form a good partnership with your school, you can help take advantage of that opportunity and provide students with the enrichment that they really need. Let me see if I can take a second to figure out this shareable document for y'all real quick. Let's see, share. Others, let's see. Okay, are you all still having trouble accessing the document?
Yes, it will not open.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'll try something else for you real quick.
It says I must ask for permission to access.
Interesting. I thought I'd fix that, but well, let's see. All right, I'm going to provide you all another link here. Let me know if this helps you out. And just publish it to the web. So hopefully this will help out here. And if someone can verify whether or not that worked, that'd be great. Okay, so it looks like maybe that was the way to go. Okay, awesome.
Good.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the help and the patience. But that's a lot of resources that we're going to kind of cover today and that you can explore a little bit more on your own. But that dashboard is what I'm looking at right now. So the dashboard is really cool because, like I said, it can kind of tell you how many funds are available total, which is what we're seeing in this graphic right here. But you can also kind of break it down by your area. So I just kind of scroll down a little bit, and this is the percent of ESSER 3 funds that have been used by different areas in North Carolina. So you can see Dillard Academy has used 83% of their allotment, whereas maybe Davie County Schools have only used 38% of their allotment. So there are significant funds still available, especially in certain regions and certain areas that are going to evaporate after that funding cliff kind of hits. And I know that schools would like to use them, but like Richard said, it's kind of all hands on deck. And I know it's also kind of all hands on deck for a lot of our after school programs as well. We're seeing the same staffing issues that schools are seeing. But this is a chance to really form a solid partnership with these schools to kind of demonstrate how valuable the work you're doing really is for the students and how enriching your content can be. And that can give us a chance to partner with these schools while these funds are still available. And then ideally, that partnership would be strong enough that we can continue it moving forward even after the funding cliff. That's a whole different can of worms. I don't think many schools know exactly what these programs are going to look like after the funding cliff hits. But just because we have a short window, I believe doesn't mean that we shouldn't take advantage of these programs while they're here, because they're going to immediately impact these students and make a positive change for them right away. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, like literally right now, but there's a lot of value in after school. And I kind of highlight some of this so that as you're thinking about how you approach these schools, you can think about what you do and what you provide for these students and how that really benefits the students and the schools that you might be working with. So I say that, after school can open doors. And again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. But after school and OST programs provide space for students to develop social skills. Most programs offer some sort of academic enrichment, even if it's just homework help, right? You're helping these students to achieve their academic goals, which is really, really vital. A lot of programs help students get healthy snacks. Like Dr. Lewis mentioned, these programs provide positive role models for students who are not parents, who are not teachers, who are just there for the students for the sake of being there and spending time with them and being safe with them, right? And encourage students to spend time safely and wisely while they're out of school, to explore new experiences, to exercise regularly, which is increasingly becoming something that students need to be doing. It's harder and harder to get active in our increasingly digital world, to develop their self-identity, to engage with hands-on STEM learning, and to be a part of their community. I'm going to talk a little bit about comprehensive after-school programs, and a big part of that is recognizing these students are a part of a vibrant community and how they what their role is in that and how they contribute to the community. This is a graphic I show pretty often because I think it is really important. These are some of the things that you can talk about when you approach a school district about a potential partnership. After-school programs in North Carolina are doing all these things. So this is a study that the After-School Alliance, which is a national organization, did across the country, and this is the North Carolina data specifically. So notably, 96% of North Carolina parents are satisfied with their child's after-school program. We are #1 in the whole country for parent satisfaction in after-school. So parents really resonate with what we are providing for students in our state. That is already a really strong talking point. But you can see, we're also building life schools. 72% of programs are providing homework help. So that's a huge portion of programs are providing homework help. 76, so over 3/4, are doing some sort of STEM or science learning opportunity. Almost 90% are engaging in physical activity. 70% are providing students with healthy snacks and meals. And then 90% are allowing students to interact with their peers and build social skills. So that is that key piece that Dr. Lewis mentioned, is these programs are really helping with the social and emotional learning and kind of that recovery aspect from the pandemic. And that's a really valuable resource that we are providing every day to our students right now. That's definitely worth highlighting as you think about a partnership with your local school districts. So I want to take a second, and we're going to break out into breakout rooms again. Everyone's favorite thing, I know. But I want you to think about, what does your program bring to the table right now? So I talked about a couple of things, right? So we're definitely going to be supporting their social and emotional health, right? But does your work align with any of the North Carolina standards? Or can you align your academic enrichment with those standards? How does it supplement and enrich the goals of your local schools? So we mentioned the PRC 189 and 181. Are you doing any college or career exploration? That leads right into North Carolina's Portrait of a Graduate. How can a partnership with your program benefit the students like in your area beyond ESSER? So that's something that I think is really important, is that we think about how these partnerships are actually going to benefit students beyond this like year and a half of ESSER, right? And then can a partnership with your local schools expand what you're doing and increase access to out-of-school learning opportunities for the students in your community? So if this partnership is strong and it lasts with your school, what's that going to look like? Okay. I'll copy and paste this into the chat, but do y'all have any questions before we kind of break out into some smaller groups? I just want you to talk with another person. I'm getting a message here. I just want to talk with another person to kind of brainstorm how your programs are already reaching the goals of some of these schools, because I think that's a valuable thought exercise. A lot of times our work is so siloed and we get so focused on what we're doing that it can become kind of hard to think about how it fits into the greater framework of what schools are doing too. But what you're doing does really support schools, right? So we're going to talk that out with maybe a partner or two. And I'll give you all maybe like 5 or 10 minutes to work on this. Camille, do you have a question?
I do. Is there an opportunity to have some additional conversations if you have tried to work with the local school system and you didn't get the wonderful response that you said we should be getting from them?
Yeah, so actually, that's actually the next part of my presentation after we kind of come back, is not every partnership starts off swimmingly. And sometimes it can take being a little bit persistent, because there are a couple of reasons that maybe schools might feel less enthusiastic about starting a partnership with these ESSER funds. So I do want to talk about that. I think it's a great question. But do you mind if we address that in just a few minutes?
Not at all.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to start breaking this into some smaller groups, maybe groups of 3 or 4. Let's see, some breakout rooms going. Okay, I'm gonna open these rooms up. I'm gonna maybe shuffle one person around here. Here we go. Let's see, move to here. Okay, I'm gonna open these rooms. Feel free to join. All right, so those invitations should have gone out for everybody.
Can you I'm on my tablet and I clicked off the screen, so the invite is no longer there. I don't know if you can resend it or
Oh, let me see if I can do that for you.
uh
Where'd you go? Oh, he's in. Okay, great. Dr. Lewis, is that your icon here?
Yes, hold on, let me mute, please.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Wayne.
Yeah.
Are they still in breakout rooms?
They're in breakout rooms. I have them coming back at 1:05.
Okay, all right. All
Sorry,
right.
I put that in the chat, but I had to step out for 1 second.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I was wondering what had happened. All right, got you. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd had to step away myself, so I put it on my phone in order to stay engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And forgot to mute my phone. So when I heard the echo, I said, oh my God, I said, it's got to be me. So thank you. All right. And of course, you know, if you need me to answer any of the questions, especially on like the districts are being told this,
Okay.
but in the case, it's always going to be their decision. So you have to really make it to where you're bringing, it's a sales pitch. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah. I'm really trying to encourage folks to think about this as not just like a quick funding opportunity, because it'd be great, obviously, if they could fund some of the efforts, because their after-school programs are providing a lot, but as a stepping stone into like a deeper relationship with their local schools, because I think that would really benefit both the schools and the providers.
yes, because one of the things, like I said, from being on both sides, you realize the service that's being provided in the program, but also looking at it through the you know, the daytime schedule is very much focused on the curriculum, the academic, and that is where you're going to have that melding of, yeah, we can provide this, but you're also going to support this because that's going to be the main focus. Always like I love it. Can you align your academic enrichment? Yes. Very good. So you're doing a great job. You're hitting a lot of key points. And again, if they need someone to just sit in on a conversation and say, hey, look, this person can speak to the value that I can bring, but they're also got to come with the open mind that you're not bringing your program, you're bringing your partnership.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be able to force a school district to align their curriculum with your program. You're going to have to, you have to marry your program to their curriculum.
Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate your offer to like potentially help facilitate a conversation, because I know a lot of programs feel a little intimidated just even approaching their school district. And that's something that I'm happy to also help try to facilitate, but I think you offer a different level of legitimacy than I might.
Well, it's just that you have to go into it knowing this is a partnership. This is what they need. Can you provide that? Well, yes, we can. Okay. That's where it begins.
Yep.
I know of a county that they do all of their own tutor training. They bring them in. They're all from the community. They pay them well. So even if it's not directly through that program, it is an opportunity for staff also. So there's many layers to it. Just me.
Absolutely. Oh, we got folks coming back already. All right.
Yes, I'm going to mute right now.
Welcome, everybody. A couple conversations are still going. They have about 30 seconds left in their breakout rooms. Welcome, welcome. Seeing some faces for the first time. Hey, y'all. Let's see. Okay, I think we got everybody back. So we're gonna go ahead and pick up where we left off. Can everyone still see my presentation? Okay, great. I'm seeing some nodding. Thank you. Before I guess we dive into the next step here, like to ask y'all, did anyone have any takeaways from their conversation they'd want to share with the larger group? Does your work already align with the North Carolina standards? Did you find a way that you could kind of fit into that PRC 189 or 181? Or do you focus a lot on the social and emotional health of your participants? Okay, well, like always, if you think of something you'd like to contribute, please go ahead and put that in the chat. But for the sake of time and valuing all of our time today, we're going to move on. And this was a question that Camille asked us a minute ago, right? So not every like budding partnership sets sails super smoothly. And navigating a no can be really tricky. Ideally, you know, we approach these school districts and our like sales pitch is so strong that they're like, oh, I see the obvious benefit of this partnership and I want to engage right away. And like Richard mentioned, there are a lot of districts or schools that do feel ready to partner and to help kind of get some of that extra like human power to really help us this learning recovery process, right? But sometimes you might run into a no, and that can be A, really discouraging, and B, kind of hard to navigate. So on that resources page I shared, and I can email that out to y'all as well. But on that resources page, I had put an article, a link to an article called Navigating the No. And these are a few of the highlights from that article. So some of the big reasons that they indicated that a district or a school might deny your invitation to partner with them might be that they consider it not an allowable use of funds, or that they're already funding tutoring. They might feel they need more control over what's happening with those funds or in that programming or that enrichment, or they might be worried that the funds are going to expire. And like I said, it can be hard to reapproach a district after you get a no, but I do think it is worthwhile. And I want to explore some of the reasons they might say no, so that we can either reapproach these schools or we can kind of head off some of their worries as you approach them for the first time, right? So not allowable use. This is one that some schools who maybe don't have any partners might run into. They might not realize that they can spend these funds on a partnership rather than running the program themselves. A lot of schools thought they had to make their own after-school programs or summer camps, and a lot of them did. But others have realized they can kind of outsource to some experts, because y'all are experts in after-school and out-of-school learning. And a lot of schools really appreciate the expertise you bring, and they want to outsource this to fellow educators in a different realm, right? So comprehensive after-school programs apply evidence-based practices to support the needs of youth, families, and communities. And there's a ton of research to show that these programs accelerate student learning gains and improve their reading and math skills. These programs engage youth in learning and boost school attendance. That's a really strong one that gets overlooked a lot. Is a lot of times when students have a place to go after school every day, they tend to show up for school more often. We've really talked about this a lot, but after-school programs support social and emotional development. They prevent youth violence by providing students a safe place to be, and they boost on-time graduation. So the work you're doing provides a lot of benefit to schools already, and sometimes it's a matter of just knowing how to highlight that, because the research is there to back up your claims that what we're doing in after school is really important. My graphic down here talks about comprehensive after school. And you can see that it doesn't just focus on one thing. It kind of takes a whole child and a whole community approach to after school. So it's everything from hands-on learning to STEM and art and music, to exploring careers and career readiness, maybe college readiness, to providing service for the community, a way to get physical and active. It gives students trusted and responsible adults to be near, and it provides academic enrichment, right? So comprehensive after-school programs really do provide a lot of services to these students, and it really helps benefit the student and the community they're a part of. Oh, I'd like to note that one of the articles on that resources page does have links to a lot of this research that you can use as you're kind of thinking about how you want to partner with these schools too. And Richard covered some of this already, but the ESSER funds are allowed to be spent partnering with other programs. So there is that kind of 20% rule that Richard mentioned, excuse me, Dr. Lewis mentioned. And that's for funding things that are going to help in the learning recovery, such as comprehensive after-school and summer enrichment programs. State education agencies must also allocate 1% for comprehensive after-school programs, 1% for summer enrichment, and 5% for learning recovery strategies, which kind of includes comprehensive after-school and summer enrichment. This bottom line here is pulled directly from the language in ESSER, but an LEA, that's a local education authority, or that could be a PSU, as Richard mentioned earlier, public school unit. Can provide services directly. Those are those after school, or those schools that started their own after school program or summer camp program, or they can enter into an agreement with someone else. And that's where we would come in, right? After school providers would be the folks who they'd enter into an agreement with that can help provide those services. And that's allowable under ESSER. So another thing you might hear is that we're already funding tutoring. And this one is a little bit of a different approach, but academic interventions like tutoring and remedial focused summer school, so traditional summer school, might be less effective if offered outside of a comprehensive program that includes enrichment and engaging activities sought out by students. So the long and short of it is, if you're enriching students while they're in a more comprehensive plan, it tends to be more effective. And the research shows that if students are kind of supported socially and behaviorally, then it tends to improve their academic performance as well. So just tutoring is not the same as being in an after-school program, which is a really important note to make when you're talking to schools. Like, yes, we do offer tutoring services in our after-school program. We offer homework help, whatever it might be, but we offer so much more than that, which is proven to be more effective in increasing academic outcomes than just tutoring alone. We need more control. So I have a quote here that you might hear. So, no, because after school and summer camp programs aren't consistent across our state and community. We'd rather use the money on something we can control directly. So this one, I think it's important to note that a nationwide poll shows that 8 in 10 voters agree that after-school programs are an absolute necessity for the community. So the parents who have students attending these schools believe in after-school and what they offer already. And after-school programs have deep ties to the community. So even though the programs might not be super consistent with necessarily what a school had in mind initially, as we're trying to align what we're doing to meet the school's needs, it's important to remember that programming is inherently connected to schools through the students they serve, and that all of our programs reflect the unique learning needs of our local students. And that's important because, yeah, a program might not be consistent across our state, but there are different needs in different areas in North Carolina. And our programs address those needs as necessary in our communities. And next up, we have that ARP and ESSER funds will expire. So sometimes schools or districts feel hesitant to enter into a partnership because they know that the partnership will be very temporary. And that it's hard to enter into this big engagement with a program if it's just going to end in a year. And the biggest argument there is that these funds are currently available and they're meant to be spent on learning recovery, and that time is right now. So I put a couple of points on here, but I think the last one is the most important, is that just because that funding might run out doesn't mean it's not worth exploring all the options to help these students recover from the pandemic in an effective way. And one of those options really is partnering with their local, with the after-school programs and community partners to make sure that students are recovering inside and outside the classroom. We do a lot of enrichment work for schools all the time, and we should highlight that A, it's very important, and B, it's timely to keep that to get that partnership running and to keep it going through the funding period for ESSER. But also, I would argue that this should be the first step in a greater partnership with schools, right? We have so many natural overlapping goals for our students that federal funding, this federal relief funding, should be the first step that we're taking as after school providers to bridge a longer and more sustained partnership with our local schools. And as you demonstrate the value of your program to these schools, I think it will become obvious that they want to partner with you moving forward too. So I'm not going to break this down into a discussion for this part, but I am going to provide you with, I call it a planning document. And this planning document, I'll send you a link here in 1 second. Planning document is basically a way to think about how you can approach local schools to start a partnership. So the first step I have here is I just want you to take a second to write out and envision what an ideal mutually beneficial partnership with local schools would look like for you. That's a step that can be, I think, overlooked sometimes as we hear about funding opportunities, right? Like, oh, funding opportunities. I'm going to do whatever I can to get that funding. And I don't think that's the right approach necessarily. I think when it comes to these ESSER funds, the opportunity is here right now to make this partnership and get those funds for the next year. But that does have an expiration date. So I think it's more important to think about what a more sustained partnership would look like for you and what would make that beneficial for you and for the school, and then ultimately for the students that we're all serving, right? And then after you kind of envision that partnership, it's important to determine and evaluate your program strengths. So what are you already doing? What is really benefiting students? And how do they line up with the goals of the school? Does your work support learning recovery efforts? So Richard mentioned a couple of these opportunities already, but your work supports these recovery efforts in more ways than just that. And I think that he did a good job of highlighting that the social and emotional learning aspect is a really important part that you're already doing. So it's really important to highlight that as you approach a partnership. Then I think it's important to identify key persons in your district. That resources page that I gave you just has a link to the directory for like school districts. That's a good place to start, but that might be kind of high level. I think you can also just reach out to principals or superintendents because they're going to be receptive to good ideas. And I think what we offer is going to be really beneficial for them. And then after you kind of identify those people, you just want to reach out and start a conversation. And I wrote in here that NCCAP's always happy to help facilitate that conversation. We would love to advocate for you and what you're doing. And Dr. Lewis also said he'd be happy to facilitate a conversation as well. So please keep us in mind as resources. And then finally, like I mentioned, I think that the focus should be on building a lasting relationship that's going to benefit students beyond ESSER. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and find this link for you real quick. While I'm doing that, does anyone have any questions about anything we've covered so far? Okay, well, I'm gonna drop this link in the chat for you. Okay. Oops. So this is the link to that planning document that I mentioned. And it really just has the questions on this slide here with some space to write out and do some thinking. But talking to your local schools can seem daunting. It can seem intimidating, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in the public school realm, right? This kind of breaks it down into more digestible steps. But I want you to keep in mind that we are here to help along the way. So if you're having trouble with the planning process or finding the right person to talk to or starting that conversation, please consider us a resource because that's what we're here for. And then, yeah, like that. So I kind of jumped the gun here on my slide, but I mentioned that we do 4 things at NCCAP, and advocating for your program is something that we would love to do. So if you feel like you're having trouble starting a conversation with a school district, please reach out. We would love to help form that connection and get that conversation rolling because we know what you're doing is valuable and we know that it can benefit the schools and the students that you want to work with. So I put our contact information on here. I'm going to update that document because Dr. Lewis said that we are welcome to put his contact information on there as well. But please, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or to our director, Elizabeth Anderson, and to Dr. Lewis. But I think that is all we have today. I promise I'll get you out here early today. So we're going to give you a little time back. Before we start wrapping up, does anyone have any questions for myself or for Dr. Lewis while you have us here right now?
Hey, Wayne, this is Lamont Savage. I just first wanted to say thank you for the time that you spent just going over this information. Was very valuable for me. Secondly, the question I have is we're a fairly new after school program and we're actually licensed. We went through the licensing process with the state. So a question I have for you is, have you seen greater or more likelihood for those facilities that do go through the licensing route with creating partnerships with the school, or does that really not matter in your experience?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I don't have a good answer, but I can say that having that license is definitely a checkbox in your favor. It shows that you have a commitment to a certain level of care for the students and that they're going to be safe and they're going to be cared for while they're with you. That's not to say that unlicensed programs aren't doing the same thing, but that is a little more demonstratable when you have that license. And I think that districts will be receptive to that.
Awesome. One other question. Is there a direct person? I know you have your contact and the director contact, but is there like county specific contact individuals or just call in and speak to someone to get a more personal relationship with you guys?
Yeah, so I think that the if you're talking about for NCCAP, there's actually only 2 of us who work at NCCAP. And that sounds a little bit crazy, I know, but we are we wear a lot of hats. But one of my hats is to form relationships with our after school providers. So definitely don't be shy. Even though there's only 2 of us, I am here to advocate for every program in our state. So I would love to hear from you and form a closer working relationship.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I know people have stuff to do today, right? And we're starting to log out. I just want to take one more second to thank Dr. Richard Lewis for attending our talk today and sharing his expertise and his willingness to help us push these partnerships moving forward. I really appreciate everyone's time today, and I look forward to hearing from you and helping these partnerships blossom in the near future, and then hopefully in a more sustained way moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody. Does anyone have any last minute questions? Because if not, I'm gonna probably go ahead and end the meeting. But if you have questions, I'm very happy to answer them.
Wayne, Wayne, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I
I'm
can.
sorry, I was struggling trying to find my mic, and I was hoping I would get you before you logged off. So I want to follow up because I don't have a specific program that I work with. I just want to
Mhm.
be able to connect churches within our Methodist family. I am
Okay.
over an initiative for the United Methodist Church, and we have churches from Asheville to Greensboro that have after school programming that can benefit from this. And I've just been
Mhm.
trying to figure out a way to help them as we're coming out of the pandemic, look at ways that they can open up and support their communities. And especially in our rural counties where churches are just so central to community and did a lot during the pandemic, even before the
Yes.
pandemic. We have several churches that are doing summer literacy initiatives through Duke Endowment. And I know that they're asking their various districts for funding to help support that. But this money could be used to help those churches that are doing that Duke Endowment summer
Mhm.
literacy initiative. So is there a way that I can have this conversation or work with you to have this kind of conversation with those churches that are doing, um, uh, summer enrichment and then even after school enrichment? I'm
Yeah,
not quite
yeah.
sure the right way to capsulate this, but again, I just know that we have, because of the initiative I'm over, we have several churches that are doing this already,
Mhm.
and this will help them tremendously.
No, I would definitely love to continue this conversation with any program that's serving students in an after school capacity or summer camp capacity. I'd love to continue this conversation. I'm happy to share something similar to what we had today. I'm happy to just like have kind of a town hall type meeting to figure out what the needs are in the community, but I would definitely love to continue that conversation.
Okay, I'm actually doing a meeting, actually when I get off this Zoom with folks that are at the conservation at NC State
Mhm.
they actually did some training for summer camps last year, and I'm asking them to do that. So I, are you available at 3 o'clock?
Oh, I'm in another meeting this afternoon,
Okay,
unfortunately. Um, I hate that because I would love to be be a part of that already. Um, but
I
certainly,
will circle back to you
yeah,
after I have
certainly
the
circle
meeting with
back
them.
and loop me in as soon as you can.
All right, thank you so much.
Of course, and thank you for coming today.
I've been looking for this type of information. So when I saw this webinar, I was very, very happy.
So can I ask you, like candidly, did you find it helpful today?
I did, just
Okay.
because that's where my focus has been, and it explained a lot. And this additional information with the what is it, I'm not, I don't have my notes in front of me, but the 181 and the
Uh-huh.
189 funding, that was tremendously helpful.
Okay,
I
good,
explained in
good.
the chat that our church was actually approved for um, to be a service provider for after school with the Forsyth County school system. But
Oh,
the way
cool.
Forsyth County set it up, the principals had to reach out to you individually for the service. And the principals were so confused in Forsyth
Mhm.
County
Oh yeah. Hmm.
on what they were supposed to do and not supposed to do. And then they had deadlines, and the deadlines were bumping up against um, you know, end of grades and all these other reports that they had to do for, Christmas. And then I had several principals to say that we weren't sure how we were supposed to do this. And
Yeah. Hmm.
so at any rate, because of their parameters, I felt like there was money on the table that didn't get,
Hmm.
that's not being spent.
You are 100% correct. The unfortunately the rollout for these ESSER funds was not very smooth because
Yep.
because a lot of districts were just dumped a bunch of money with very
Yep.
little guidance, and they weren't sure
Yep.
how to use them.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
and so that's been really messy for the schools. And like you said, it's meant that a lot of money has been left on the table, which is a shame because that money has been allocated, for our students to benefit their learning. So we definitely want to make sure we take advantage of that while it's still here.
So the last conversation I had about some of this, if I remember correctly, the federal dollars that were allocated for summer programming, there was an opportunity for states to indicate if that funding could go to churches, and North Carolina chose not to participate in the funding to go
Mm.
directly to, or that for churches to participate, that it went to the district. So is that what that 181 and 189 funding entails, or do you know?
I,
Do you
I
know what
would
I'm
need to,
asking? Does that make
yeah,
sense?
I would need to ask Dr. Lewis to be 100% certain. But from what I understand about these ESSER funds is that they came from the federal government to the state, and the state just gave them to all the school districts, and the
Mhm.
districts can decide how they want to use those funds. So I think every district has made their own decision about whether or not churches can be like partners.
Yeah,
So it might look a little different depending on like which district you're in, actually.
gotcha. All right, that's helpful too. Thank you so very much.
Of course, of course. Is there anything else you have questions about, you want to talk about?
No, no, that's it. Thank you. I'll follow up.
That sounds great. Yeah, please do. All right. And then we got a couple more stragglers here. Anyone else have any questions today? Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time.